Good morning everyone. This is Kailin Kamikawa. Last time, I talked about the recent Koreans who have an extremely strong health consciousness. Then, regarding food hygiene other than radioactivity, you have a strict hygiene consciousness, right? I thought, but South Korea is totally useless when it comes to food hygiene and radioactivity management in its own country. Do Koreans feel any contradiction in this double standard? That is the agenda for this time. Because in Korea, it is said that reuse of food once served to customers is legal. Moreover, even kimchi, rice, ramen soup, etc. that the customer once put on chopsticks, it is possible to feed the next customer. That is, the leftover food can be reused. If this is the case, nervous Japanese can no longer eat out in Korea. I think it will be a big fuss saying, "I can't go to Korea anymore." Let's take a closer look. In the first place, in Korea, based on the food sanitation law, as a general rule, the reuse of food left over by customers is prohibited. However, in South Korea, in August 2018, at a famous buffet restaurant, a whistleblower discovered that he was reusing ingredients such as sashimi, which became a social problem. According to the Jungang Ilbo, the store site, I explained that there is no legal problem because it was displayed instead of leftover food. Not only Japanese but also Koreans couldn't believe this excuse. Of course. In response to this, the Korean Food and Drug Administration investigated the actual situation at the buffet restaurant. About food handling in the buffet that was not covered by law, we have decided to formulate new guidelines. South Korean SBS News Communicating Guideline Development Korea Major League Baseball News, October 15, 2018. The formulation is reported as follows. Food service providers are based on the food sanitation law. Customers cannot reuse, cook, or store leftover food or displayed food. If you violate this, you will be punished for 3 months from 15 days of suspension of business. In the guideline, the following was stated in the form of Q&A1. Sashimi, sushi, and seaweed rolls once displayed, it cannot be reused because the microorganisms are likely to grow. 2. Once cut and the contents come into contact with the air, do not reuse it. 3. Breads with cream like cakes, it cannot be reused because there is a high possibility that microorganisms will grow. 4. If you touch it in the air for a long time, it will cause rot, so even with the lid on, tempura and japchae cannot be reused. 5. Furthermore, when displaying food, leave a sufficient space of 20 centimeters or more. 6. Dispose of all foods displayed for 2 hours or more. Such points have also been decided in detail. However, there were exceptions in this guideline. Foods that can be judged to have no problems with hygiene and safety. It should be handled hygienically and can be reused only if the following items apply. It is said that this was the basis for saying that reuse has become legal. For example, lettuce, sesame leaves, chili peppers, garlic, cherry tomatoes, grapes, kumquats, uncooked vegetables and fruits such as b. Those with an exodermis such as bananas, mandarins, lychees, peanuts, walnuts, etc. c. Knobs, nuts and sweets. d. Chocolate and bread, without cream, are also possible if they are displayed in a certain way. Further, e. Condiments such as salt, spices and pepper. f. Chinese cabbage kimchi and other kimchi, rice and other containers with lids that customers serve with tongs, etc. These were, as an exception, reusable. Regarding this matter, South Korea's Buzz Plus News has such an exception. He said, reuse of leftover food. Certainly in the article, foodstuffs that are less likely to spoil or contaminate are legally allowed to be reused. There is no mistake in the foods with exceptions that are quoted. There, he misread only the headline. Did the country finally allow the reuse of leftover food? Is this also a cultural difference? Even so, I don't really understand legalization. Comments on the net such as, etc. were summarized. For it, fact check, that verifies Korean politicians, media reports, online information, etc. It has led to the result of fueling prejudice against South Korea. He makes statements in support of reuse according to Korean guidelines. NCOR's 2018 guidelines allow for reuse in a buffet style. Food and drinks once served on the table should not be reused, recooked, or stored. In this regard, reuse is not permitted. The Korean media, some people misunderstood the content and received it. We are reusing leftover food left by customers on the internet. What a factless writing has appeared, but South Korea is a fine developed country. There is no reason to give any leftover food to other customers. On the net, you can see that it is written quite exaggeratedly. I have an excuse. Is this true? Can you believe this statement in the media? The lettuce and chili peppers served in Korean restaurants are served on a separate plate from the dish, so it is not cooked or seasoned for ingredients that are not in contact with other dishes after washing with the specified cleaning method. If there is no hygienic problem, even if it is given to the customer, it can be reused. Is it possible to wash kimchi? It's strange. Well, about this, if the customer wants to reuse the chopsticks once attached, it is not allowed in Japan, but if you think that it is the same as pickled plums, pickled ginger, etc. that are placed on the table in a separate container in Japan, I think it's necessary to give 100 steps and become a national character, especially nervous. Even if you are convinced that kimchi is free, and that's what it is in Korea. Other than that, aren't you reusing what the customer once put on chopsticks? I want to ask Koreans clearly about that. Please feel free to comment to me. This time, even though it was an old article 9 years ago, I would like to inform you that there was a very interesting article. In Niigata Nippo, dated December 28, 2012, Karen Amamiya traveled to South Korea. She introduces an article that she was impressed by the store that served the clerks leftover food to customers. I don't know what kind of identity this Amamiya Karen is, a detoxification trip to South Korea. Impressed by the suitability of the shop staff. In one corner of the store, some people eat different meals. It looks like it's definitely better. In particular, I was eating rice from a rice cooker that was different from the rice cooker that I served to customers. The one for the shop staff is obviously freshly cooked. That's fine, but the problem was after eating. When the shop staff finish eating, put the remaining rice into the rice cooker for customers, as a matter of course. All the leftovers will naturally return the surplus rice to the rice cooker that is served to us. Seeing the scene, I was moved and trembled. Not long ago, in Japan, it became a problem because high-class restaurants used up the surplus food. At this restaurant in South Korea next door, leftover rice from employees is openly served to customers. Moreover, there is no offense. On the other hand, in Japan, the value that consumers are the greatest has been widespread. A society that makes complaints for small things will be killed. However, I had a valuable experience of being able to pay for leftover food and thought, I think it's better to be more appropriate in the world. At least I don't want to be friends with anyone who witnesses this scene and makes me worried. Even today, leftover rice from the shop staff is served at that shop. When I think about it, I feel like laughing. If I go to Korea again, I'm sure I will go to that store. At Korean restaurants, it is natural to reuse the rest of the food once served to other customers. It's been less than 10 years since I started to think about reuse. Until then, it was common sense to reuse food. Originally in Korea, if you don't serve a large amount of food so that customers can leave it, you can't say hospitality. On the contrary, there is a culture on the customer's side that the food served is left behind. Therefore, Koreans still boast that leaving food is a traditional food culture in Korea. Therefore, in Korea, a large amount of leftover food is generated with each meal. Reuse of leftover food is common sense. It's rare to find a restaurant that you haven't done. Korean reuse, it was said. But this is probably said with sarcastic or sarcasm. Don't take the Japanese words as they are. We will also introduce the Nikkei Gendai published on December 26, 2008. In fact, the reuse situation in South Korea is tremendous. According to an independent survey by KBS TV, it is said that 80% of restaurants are reusing, so it is rare to find a restaurant that does not. What kind of leftovers are the customers eating? The most common is banchan. At Korean restaurants, apart from the menu ordered by the customer, several kinds of side dishes such as kimchi, salted fish, spicy sauce, namul, and Korean seaweed are served for free. This is banchan, and I don't want the store to think it's a stingy store, so I put it out in a heap. Naturally, there will be a large amount of leftover food, but if you throw it away, it will not be a business. Most of the stores are refilled and served to the next customer. Even if it is not served as it is used as an ingredient for kimchi jjigae and stir-fried foods. A country that has a law that says, reuse of leftover food up to 4 times. Korean traditional culture. It won't go away so easily. Well, it was 10 years ago, so it's changed now, isn't it? Well, I don't dare to criticize it because it's about another country. However, people at this level think that Japan is at the same level as their own country. I think it is better to stop blaming Japan for no reason in the future. The same is true for the treatment of treated water in Fukushima. There is a 10,000-fold difference between the Korean level and the Japanese level. Koreans have to understand that point. In addition, Japanese people do not lie or forge in order to repair the situation. There are no 2 words for samurai. This is the truth of the Japanese people. Koreans have to understand that point. Lie like exhaling, the Japanese, and people all over the world, should never forget this word. Don't be fooled by Korean lies. That's all.